Okay, what is the best catch that you saw on any level of football last season? Odell Beckham Jr., of course, for the New York Giants against the Dallas Cowboys. The SEC has produced the best wide receiver talent of any conference in college football for the past few years, and they lose the best that they have or anybody else in Alabama's Amari Cooper. But there is plenty of talent to talk about for 2015 as we here on Mark Rogers TV knock down the top five at every position in the SEC. So let's start with Darunnia Wilson of Mississippi State, the fifth best wide receiver entering 2015. 47 catches for 680 yards and 9 touchdowns as the Bulldogs made the trip to the Orange Bowl. Yes, they faltered late, but Darunnia Wilson was a perfect complement for the injured Jamion Lewis, the smaller wide receiver who plays more underneath, catches the possession type throws. Darunnia Wilson, big play threat for Dak Prescott in Mississippi State. 6'5", 225, former basketball standout, an all-state performer in Birmingham, Alabama. Kind of rough around the edges as a football player. Even now, he focused on basketball in high school. Now he is a football player for sure and becoming more and more polished. So look out for Darunnia Wilson with Dak Prescott back at quarterback at Mississippi State in 2015. Number 4 is a first-team All-SEC performer who wasn't even considered the best wide receiver on his own team entering 2014. Pharoah Cooper of South Carolina. 69 receptions, 1,136 yards, and 9 touchdowns, and he ran it 24 times for a $198 and 2 touchdowns. Had a great game against Auburn when South Carolina almost pulled off the upset on the Plains. 7 catches for a $127 and 2 touchdowns. Wrapped up with a nice effort in the bowl game as the Gamecocks finished with the win over Miami. 9 catches for 170 yards and a touchdown. But the best game in the middle of the season for Pharoah Cooper against Tennessee. Double overtime game. 11 catches, 233 yards, and 2 touchdowns receiving. 4 touchdowns total because he threw 1 and he ran for 1. 4 touchdowns against Tennessee. Pharoah Cooper with the 9 touchdown receptions and 13 total touchdowns for South Carolina. He's number 4. At number 3, we go to Texas A&M, and this is a difficult choice because this may be the deepest, most talented, and again, the depth at Texas A&M at wide receiver is amazing. Talking about young wide receivers, even with Malcolm Kennedy moving on, Josh Reynolds, the unlikely candidate out of this group to emerge as a star. He was a junior college transfer and not very heralded compared to his contemporaries. 52 catches, 842 yards, and here's the big number, 13 touchdowns for Josh Reynolds. Had a big 2-touchdown game at Auburn in the upset win for the Aggies on the Plains. In 9 games, he caught for touchdowns. 9 games, and he improved late down the stretch, gained a rapport with freshman quarterback Kyle Allen once Allen wrestled the job away from Kenny Hill, and expect that red zone chemistry to continue into 2015 so we could see huge things out of Josh Reynolds. He just has to, again, share the football with a very talented group of wide receivers in College Station. At number 2, we go with Laquon Treadwell of Ole Miss. Caught 48 for 638 yards and 5 touchdowns, but forget the stats, of course. He injured himself lunging for what would have been the game-winning touchdown at home against Auburn in that game. 10 catches for 103 yards and a touchdown, but in a valiant effort to get to the goal line and score the game winner, he broke his tibia. He fractured and dislocated his left ankle, and he missed the last 4 games. And we saw what happened to the Rebels offense without their best wide receiver. They went downhill. They used a lot of trick plays in the running game against Mississippi State, but other than that, 3 points against TCU, shutout against Arkansas. The Rebels were never the same once they lost this guy who reminds me very much of a young Michael Irvin. He's a long strider, doesn't have top-end speed, but definitely good enough speed. What we have not seen out of Treadwell is that once Dante Moncrief moved on to the Indianapolis Colts, Treadwell hitting for big chunk plays downfield for Ole Miss. Only about 13 yards per catch last season. As a freshman, about 8 yards per catch on 72 catches. So, yes, I'm being nitpicky here. Dynamic playmaker. great hands, great strides, and has been an impact player, game changer since his first game against Vanderbilt in 2013. Treadwell, coming back from injury. Let's see him get after it here in 2015. And our number one wide receiver, not based on production, but based on production plus potential, is Duke Williams out of Auburn. 45 catches, 730 yards. That's 16 and a half yards per catch, 5 touchdowns. Consider this, that Williams is going to be working with Jeremy Johnson, a quarterback, this year. He worked with Johnson for just one game in 2014 when Nick Marshall was suspended. That was game 1 against Arkansas, which turned out to be one of the best defenses in the SEC. And Duke Williams ripped him up. 7 catches for $154 and a touchdown against Arkansas. That was the one game with Jeremy Johnson at quarterback. Johnson's going to be one of the best in the league. And he's got Duke Williams, who has long arms, huge hands. He's a long strider. He's got speed. He's been timed at a 4.48. He has power. He doesn't have the great route running at this point. He's not polished at this point. He's not extremely fluid, but everything else lines up. He had a big game, as we mentioned, against Arkansas. Kansas State on the road, a big win for the Auburn Tigers. 8 catches for $110 and a touchdown, and he caught 7 for 110, or actually 121 against Alabama. He did miss 3 games, and Auburn lost 2 of them. Yeah, they were able to take care of Samford without him, but they lost to Georgia and Wisconsin without Duke Williams, who was suspended for the bowl game, injured against Georgia. This guy has been compared to Michael Crabtree, and he may be even a little bit more talented because I think he's a little faster than Michael Crabtree at running 4.48. So that's the top 5 wide receivers in the SEC. Darunya Wilson, Mississippi State at number 5. Number 4, we've got Pharoah Cooper of South Carolina. Our number 3 guy out of Texas A&M, Josh Reynolds. Number 2, Laquon Treadwell, Ole Miss. And at number 1 is Duke Williams out of Auburn. Let's hear what you have to say about the best at wide receiver in the SEC. Right here on Mark Rogers TV.